to this is, I had to get you every once in a while to make sure you're still on your toes. The Switch 2, is it actually coming? Is it really going to replace your PS5, Steam Deck, PS4, Xbox 360, Super Nintendo, and Sega Dreamcast?
I'm glad that you open it up like that, because the whole thing I want to talk about is no, it will not. And I don't even mean that from a power standpoint. I've been pretty anti-Nintendo.
What? Matt, I've never heard you say a bad thing about Nintendo a day in my life.
I feel like all the Switch Pro rumors just have now become Switch 2 rumors. The rumors with the Switch is at Gamescom, Nintendo through back doors that they showed off a Switch 2 dev kit that was running a much sexier version of Breath of the Wild. Not even Tears of the Kingdom, for the record.
Well, it's just a tech demo, so I assume sort of for them to get their head around the hardware and whatnot. It's supposed to be running at like 4K and 60 FPS with like DLSS and whatnot. Remember the GameCube, like that crazy 3D thing that never came out that everyone thought was super cool? Like they have a tendency to do this.
But they also showed like an Unreal demo. Supposedly it was the same demo, the Matrix one, which was a very impressive demo.
Incredibly impressive. If Nintendo are close enough to be showing off dev kits to developers, you know that the actual announcement is going to be very soon.
They'll announce it just in time for people to have buyer's remorse for having bought Switches.
But outside the return window.
Yeah, for Christmas this year.
This thing is clearly imminent. I don't think there's any real question.
Of course it's
that Switch 2, we will be playing it, 12-ish months from now, and it'll be announced fairly soon. Like, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. There are some interesting things to talk about the rumors, but also I think something that we should really talk about is just the idea of what Switch 2 could do. Because again, as we've discussed, the Switch 2 is launching into a very different ecosystem than Switch 1 did. I will argue that Switch 1 was a real pioneer for handheld gaming consoles. Now, obviously, stuff like the PSP and the DS and all that kind of stuff came before it, but the Switch was the first proper, home console-grade portable system that really blurred those lines. And without Switch, I would argue we don't have Steam Deck, we don't have ROG Ally. Switch is kind of what sparked that whole revolution, and I think that they're gonna have a lot more competition this time around, from performance, from games, all this kind of stuff. It's not free real estate anymore, Matt.
And I have a more philosophical questnundrum. There are two wolves inside of you.
Me?
One is a handheld, and one is a not handheld. I mean, me personally, I don't think I ever docked my Switch when I had it. What did you get in docked mode? Barely any graphic upgrade.
Well, like 720 versus 1080. It's
not like it being a hybrid really didn't benefit too much, because they're saying it's a hybrid console, and the dock did nothing for the console. We have the regular Switch, all right, which is your hybrid console.
Yep.
You have the Switch Lite,
it's a better one,
which is not hybrid at all. And then we have the OLED, which apparently we're not getting OLED. What is actually more powerful about the Switch 2? And what kind of device is it going to be?
You're going to have updated NVIDIA processors. So you're going to have much newer GPUs. They're going to support theoretically some ray tracing, but most importantly, DLSS.
What game do you think in the Nintendo catalog would benefit from ray tracing?
Call of Duty.
No. I would love to see Mario ray trace, but every time someone tries to make a mod of that right now, they get put in jail. The big argument that people come back at me with well, it doesn't need all this graphical power because all their stuff is not super graphical demanding. Okay, let's go with that for a second then.
Yeah.
And let's say, all right, why do we need all this spec bumps for this?
To keep up with the current generation of gaming would be my argument. We don't know what's inside. So a few months ago on the main channel, we actually took a look at an NVIDIA board that they sell, and we tried to use that because that was supposedly based on the same silicon. When we were trying that, what we were getting is something that was in the neighborhood of something like a PS4, which might not sound all that impressive, but it was a relatively strong step up. And importantly, it's not just the raw performance that you're getting here. You're also getting just a more modern GPU, which again is going to support DLSS and whatnot, which is almost as big of an upgrade as just the raw teraflops behind the new hardware.
I have the most controversial take. This is the one
that's
going to get me canceled.
Okay, let's hear it.
I don't think there should be a Switch 2. Nintendo is no longer a hardware company. They are a software company only.
You want them to Sega-ify themselves?
Yep. Because, let's face it, the only reason people buy Nintendo stuff now is to play their first-party stuff. One of the things we always are talking about is how expensive gaming is becoming. I'll give them the innovation of a portable handheld, whatever, and now someone does it a lot better. Valve does it great.
Yep.
All right? The Ally does it great. Lenovo has a great device, which even has Joy-Cons.
Joy-Cons, I agreed, yeah.
So, they do it better than Nintendo does.
Sure.
I ding them a lot for not putting enough power in these devices. And
the Switch is really old, Matt. It came out 2017 or something. Like, it's
so
old.
what? But they put in not great components in 2017. That's my point. You're not gonna win a race with one leg tied behind your.
I think they won the race actually. Wait, one leg tied behind your back?
I don't know what I was trying to say. Okay, let's not.
This is where I remind you to subscribe to the channel for hilarious bits like one leg tied behind your back.
If they're starting off with PS4 or graphics, they're already 7 years behind again, 10 years behind. Look at what the iPhone is capable of doing with their chip right now. Everyone else is miles ahead of what Nintendo's capable of doing. It's always like, oh, well, they put that in there so they can make money off their consoles and stuff like that. That sucks for the consumer. Like, let's be real. And they nickel and dime you for all this stuff. They don't know how to run an online store. They all these super basic things about just running
Switch
online game, it's just garbage. There's no chat. That's it's like, oh, now we got to use our phone to do that. Like, it's all garbage. So let's just stop. The reason people are buying a Switch is because they want the new Mario. They want the new Zelda. Within the first week of Pokemon Scarlet coming out, people had it running way better on a PC. Remember when it used to be emulators just can't run with modern systems? That's no longer the case with a Switch because this stuff is so old.
Okay. Let's break that down because you're throwing you're levying a lot of accusations against my boys at the big end. I love to put my Defendo hat on for a second. Okay, so your thesis is that Nintendo should stop making hardware because they're not innovating.
I want to be really clear. I don't think that Nintendo should do this. I want them to.
Switch, I think, was hugely influential. Wii U was a really poorly formed prototype for the Switch. The Wii, massively successful. GameCube, N64, Super Nintendo, great. NES, great. So they're batting pretty good. None of the current handheld PCs would run if the Switch had not walked.
Okay,
so that's my first argument.
You can argue the same thing about the Model T car, yet we still don't drive that around. As gaming gets more and more expensive, people are not going to be able to afford to have every console like they have in the past. I think people are going to end up buying Steam Decks, if I'm honest, at $400. Steam Deck is the cheapest way to get into PC gaming by a long shot. Now imagine if all the Nintendo games were on Steam.
Of course they would sell a ton. Of course they would.
Of course they would sell a ton. And that's where you actually make money.
But they're making plenty of money selling you not only the hardware, but also the software. It would be great if we all used the same beige box and we all played the same beige games on the same beige channels.
Yes.
Guess what? I don't want to live in a beige world, Matt. I want to see color. I want to see 3 dimensions. The Switch 2 is happening. Like, I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever. I mean, even you have to admit the Switch 2 is clearly right around the corner.
I definitely think it's going to happen.
So, I think that the Switch 2, at bare minimum, needs to match the Steam Deck in terms of performance. Obviously, it needs a more modern architecture and whatnot. So again, we're talking DLSS, ray tracing, all that kind of stuff. Like, they need to have the same sort of building blocks that modern systems do. But for the actual performance target, I think they need to be at least Steam Deck equivalent, if not maybe a little bit more. I think if Switch could come anywhere close to Series S in terms of performance, Nintendo would be in very good shape.
I have a hard time telling oh yeah, you guys should go buy this console which has 10-year-old performance levels.
Then let me flip the argument around.
Yeah.
Remember when you're talking about the iPhone 15 Pro Max?
Yes.
That's able to play all these AAA games. You know that's still playing games at PS4 settings or something?
And,
it's
but
impressive,
here's
but
where that's different. Because you're right.
Yeah.
I can't deny that, blah blah. It's definitely not playing at super high refresh rates and all this stuff. But it's still a single device that you are already going to be owning that's in your pocket.
Let me pitch you on my ideal version of Switch 2. Okay?
Yeah.
Same price. $300 to $350. Now, especially if they're getting rid of the OLED and they're going back to an IPS display, it seems like it's doable for them to keep it in that same price band. Certainly $400, less than $400. I think $350 is kind of like my personal max. Again, somewhere between Steam Deck and Series S performance levels, which I know it's a pretty big gap, something that actually can somewhat comfortably run modern AAA titles. I also want backwards compatibility with the same physical size of carts. Imagine a transition in which games are sold, much like on the Xbox, where it's sold for the Switch or the Switch 2. And if you're playing on Switch 2, then it downloads the HD texture pack or whatever the case is. AKA, I wish the Switch 2 was just the Switch Pro. That's my pitch. Is that crazy pitch?
Xbox is putting their stuff on Xbox and PC. Because again, the hardware is not important anymore. It used to be to say you have to get this console in order to play these games. Every other company's we want to expand this out into other avenues to play these games. And Nintendo's just no, you have to buy our box to play our game. That's the definition of a monopoly.
Are you a diamond miner out here being forced to sell your holdings to De Beers? I don't think so, Matt. You have choice on playing your Mario game on the Switch 2, the Switch or the 3DS
Yeah,
or
because
the Wii
it's
U.
the same Mario game on the 3DS. To show like how held back their own properties are by their own hardware and how much better it can run even on the shittiest PC. I tested it out on like not a great PC and it worked, like Pokemon worked so much better than the Switch. And like just shows that they don't care.
No, but Nintendo just have different priorities. I actually will defend this. Think about like the Game Boy. The Game Boy was by far the least powerful of the handheld consoles at the time. Think about this for the Switch, right? Put the Switch next to any of the other portable systems. The Switch, even as old as it is, puts way more emphasis on the affordability aspect. I mean, you're not buying any of these things for $200. It also has way better battery life. Like, they're conservative. Nintendo are not shipping you a Switch 2 that has an hour and a half of battery life. They're not shipping you a Switch 2 that costs $800. Obviously, if that's what you want, you can go out and buy yourself a Sega Nomad. But like, most people are probably gonna want the Game Boy.
I just don't understand how Nintendo gets a pass when like anytime Sony or Xbox does this. Xbox is a monopoly, yet they give you a dozen different ways to play their games.
Yeah.
You don't even need to own a console at all to play these games, where Nintendo just says, no, you're gonna play the same game that we've given you for 60 years and you're gonna buy the game again.
I am gonna do that, man.
It's like,
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like it.
they're just so like bad for the gaming industry, and just because they make piles of money, they're never gonna change.
I feel like we just had this conversation and like, oh, let's talk about the Switch 2, and we go immediately into an existential conversation about the future of Nintendo.
I feel like this is what they need to decide on as a company.
They've already decided, and they're going to decide to make lots of money, and we're going to buy Mario Kart 9. Again, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and ring-a-ling the ding-a-ling button. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Switch 2 and Nintendo's quasi-De Beers monopoly on the gaming industry.